sedimentation, erosion, then flooding, volcanic ash deposition from the top. Something else is coming. It's a foreign particle which is getting deposited on the soil. And based on the trophic nature, you have autotrophic succession, heterotrophic succession, wherein decomposition is there mostly. In fact, so it's an organic rich habitat which is present over there. Moisture condition, direction changes also have different kinds of successions. In fact, the hydrarch or hydroxyle, that is already aquatic habitat which is wet in nature, swamps in fact, they have this kind of conditions. And the extreme opposite of it is that very dry areas. So over there, bare rock, what is the kind of condition and how or what will happen later once this condition is present. Then based on the direction of change, then you have progressive and retrogressive succession. And then you have a cyclic succession wherein all of this come into play. So one after the other, it is going to change. So to explain all of the species replacement, because one species, after a fire, that species which was there earlier existing, it may not be there anymore. So based on this, you have a facilitation model, inhibition model, and a tolerant model, a tolerance model. And what is the significance of all of this? It creates or modifies, according to this, when we have observed all of it, we know that what kind of species can survive after a particular event has occurred, after a fire has occurred or a flood has occurred, which species is going to stay alive or is going to thrive and comes. So it supports recolonization after disturbance, helps in restoration of the ecology. And if at all there is any kind of change, it is going to be taken into consideration. So these are the types of succession that we have seen. Now we have the trends of succession. So this is wherein, all the climatic patterns will play a role. Then you have the ocean pattern, because when temperature increases, ocean is the biggest sink for carbon dioxide, even for like what do you call it, say what do you call it, even the temperature for that matter. And so it plays a much important role. So over the years, you have seen that there is a pattern wherein, you have a marine heat wave occurring, altered currents are there because the currents change according to the temperature as well, and according to the carbon dioxide amount, and according to the different oxygen levels in the ocean. And at the same time, if whenever there is a tectonic plate movement or any kind of disturbance, you see that there is a difference in the pattern. Sea level also. Consistently over the last, say, 100 years to 200 years, you see that there is a rise in the sea level. Thermal expansion of seawater, addition of water from the melting of glaciers. And the cryosphere pattern, wherein you get to see that the ice or the glaciers are declining. Ice sheets, the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle is melting. There is an ice sheet mass loss. And there's a hydrological pattern where wet gets wetter, dry gets drier. Of course, this is because, see, we have, right now, if you see, actually, we do not have much of water or rainfall. There is a deficit, at least in Telangana, in this year. But you never know how it is going to be in November, because remember that last year November there was a lot of rain rather than in the month of July and June. So that's how the climate is changing. You have to expect more rainfall during these months of autumn or rainy season, which is not happening. That's the shift in the pattern. And at the same time, higher drought variability. The dry areas are still do not get any kind of rainfall. And that's what I just kind of told. Monsoon timing or intensity disturbances is there. And then you get to see atmospheric composition pattern. So all your greenhouse gases are increasing in nature. Then you get to see that there is an extreme pattern going on: heat waves, heavy precipitation, flooding, drought clusters, all of it. So if you see according to what we can do as biologists, then you get to see that how can or what is the effect that is happening because of this kind of biological stress architecture, or we get to see the biosphere stress architecture. We get to observe that physiological stress is happening at the thermal and water stress, which is going to alter the metabolism, growth, and reproduction of the living organisms. Because of this, there's a physiological shift happening. Flowering, migration, breeding cycles, all of this are going to be not in the same as earlier. So there's a desynchronization. There's a change in the timing. Range shifts is observed. Community reassembly has to take place. So that is the trophic links, ecosystem functions have to be, they're getting reorganized. We are all after some extreme event, we try to cope up with it and then again build from the scratch. So there's a resilience threshold also. So what happens is cross-tipping transitions will take place under repeated extreme conditions. So how do you see this? The greenhouse gases are rising. There's an energy imbalance happening. Atmosphere and the ocean are warming at the same time. There's a cryosphere, the ice, polar Arctic ice caps are melting. Hydrological or water, intensification is happening. The sea level is rising. Extreme conditions are there. So this causes ecological stress, and we have an adaptation pressure. Otherwise, if there is no adaptation pressure, then that particular species will succumb. So this global climatic pattern is characterized by this anthropogenic warming, ocean heat accumulation, cryosphere decline, sea level rise, intensified hydrological variability. So this is one thing. Second, how do you happen to have the models for ecological succession? You get to see there are quite a lot of models or concepts that have been given, each highlighting a different mechanism for the community change. One is your Clementsian model, wherein from fixed stages there is a passing of the community from being a pioneer community to the climax community. So this is something, this particular community is going to survive, highly ordered, predictable, and it is helping the organism. So there's a nudation, meaning breaking down of all the community, and then migration, excess, assesses, and then you have the competition or coaction, then reaction to it, stabilization, which is the climax. But having said that, this is going to be helpful for succession or early succession, but it has got its own limitation. That is, real ecosystems usually have multiple options to follow. And you have a Glisonian model, that is, succession is basically a little more flexible in nature, and each species is given their own the response time, in fact. And the importance is that different species combinations are taken into consideration, but late species are often absent initially, they arrive later, and it usually helps in primary and secondary succession. Then the initial floristic composition is another model that was given by life history differences which are there, and then repeated new invasions, whatever is happening. So the same problem doesn't keep coming. So uh, 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 then the second one, the fifth one is your Cornell and Slater model, in which you have again different, what do you call it? It is important as per your exam view, in fact. It has again facilitation model, tolerance and inhibition. And then you have your ODM's ecosystem development model, in which you have, what do you call it, the biomass is increasing. All of this is predicted or predictable. So you get to see that in this pioneer facilitation model, you see different kind of, what is happening is a particular species comes, makes the habitat suitable for the different species to come and start living over. It is there in very harsh areas. Tolerance model, low, what do you call it, resource conditions, in fact. And inhibition model, wherein, early occupants, whatever the species are there, they are going to not help or stop the development or establishment of other later species. Now, sixth model is your ODM's model. This gives you about the food, biomass, and the nutrient cycling, in fact. And this is the linked succession for the energy flow biogeochemical cycles. And it is highly useful in the different kinds of environmental biology. Then you also have a resource ratio model and your patch dynamic model and the that is your non-equilibrium models. In fact, again, why is this important? Escapes the it tells you about the different kinds of landscapes that are already present and how it shows different kinds of successions at the same time and how the cyclic interruption is taking place. Now, when it comes to the applied ecology, you're going to take all of these into consideration, and it is used in your ranges you have with grasslands included, and with a lot of other, like, what do you call it, uh, different kinds of cattle communities are taken into consideration and how that particular area is there. And then you have the wetlands, and then you have the restoration ecology. So the main idea is that you have multiple states in it, and then shifter system can be managed across different areas, and till how what threshold it can be gone, and then you can again come back to the earlier or the previous state in case if that particular area is not or it's not working out. It is useful for restoration planning after any kind of particular climate change. So again, you have a climax concept, which is your monoclimax, poly, and climax pattern hypothesis that was given by Whittaker. In fact, different scientists had given different kinds of concepts. And then you have the comparison of all of them. So when you see the mechanisms, then you have site opening, initiation, that is nudation or disturbance creation, basically, wherein extreme conditions, volcanic activity, fires, floods, all of this creates an ecological space, removes the existing species, living organisms, alters the different kinds of resource availability in a day or immediately. A fire will occur suddenly. So this will create a disturbance and it clears out that particular area. After that, you have the propagules or migration or colonization. So what happens is this species, they migrate to different factors. So what are the controlling factors over here? Once the species go to different areas, you see that, especially the seed parts and animal mediated dispersal is occurring. Animals migrate to different areas. So you have a distance from the source population occurring. And what are the modes of dispersal? Then how is the propagation occurring? And how much of connectivity is there from the previous area to the new area? So all of this has to be taken into consideration. Then establishment and assess. So what is happening once you just go to that or migrate to that particular area, that is not sufficient. So you have different kinds of stress over here. So you have filters at every stage, abiotic stress and substrate instability, herbivory and pathogen load. Then you have your site suitability as well. Then you have your aggregation and population growth, which is taking place once the species sets down at one particular place. And then you have the different kinds of environmental modification that is happening. So there. Also after that, based on these changes, you have different kinds of animals coming or species coming over, both plant and animal, and then establish themselves in that area as the pioneers. Now you have the biotic interactions which are going to help in driving the replacement. So facilitation, tolerance of that particular area, and then inhibition of the other. So early occupants suppress the later arrivals. You always have a competition and a resource ratio shifting, which is a constant game changer. And then you have the trophic and soil food web feedbacks, which is taking place. So what is happening over here? Herbivores, whoever are there, they are going to shape the dominance patterns. Predators regulate the herbivores. Decomposers should be present at every trophic level. They have to be present because that is how your nutrient mineralization is occurring. And soil microbes should be there. That is also going to help in your positive or negative feedback. All of this is important and it is going to help in your successional change. Then you have the autogenic allogenic controls, the disturbance regime, and also the invasion species which are going to come and create a change. So early dominance, they log the trajectories, they help in the resource capture. So invasive species also direct that succession back basically. So if you get to see, finally you get to see that there is a site opening through some natural disturbance, propagule arrival, establishment, that is your SS, then population expansion, then it causes habitat modification, then you have the next event or the next what is happening is your interaction driven replacement, that is your facilitation, tolerance or inhibition. After that, we get to go to our resource ratio, how much of resource is available for the herbivores and then how the predators are going to come and put a balance or the check on the herbivores from consuming. See, if at all the deer population goes on increasing and there is no predator or a carnivore to actually keep this in check, then the producer's amount will gradually decline because there is no amount of food available for the next generation or so. So that is one of the checks over there. So you need a predator at every level. And if at all there's a deer carcass, it has to be decomposed. So you need a decomposer at every level so that, everything is in balance. So that is one thing. That is your resource ratio shift. Then your trophic feedback and stabilization or transition to the alternate state. So the climax community is the stable community that is present at the terminal stage of ecological succession. It helps in it is going to help in establishing that community to be a little more stable. So it is characterized by your species which live for a long time, and you have very complex food web in that particular climax community, in fact. So what are the major features? Relative stability, then you have it has a high structural complexity, then dominance of K-related species which are slow growing. You don't have many progeny being produced. It is competitive. It is going to live for a longer life. And then you have the closed or the tight nutrient cycling which is there. You have a large standing biomass. Balance is going to be maintained. High respiration, net what do you call it, low net community production or compared to the developing. So if at all there is the low net community production, that will help in longer sustenance. And then you have resistance and resilience to smaller disturbances. So it is not going to affect a community because just because there is a flood in that particular area. It can thrive. It can help in living for a longer time. So you have the climax concept, pioneer herbs, grasses, shrubs. Then you have a young woodland. Then you have a mature forest climax, which is present. So again, there are different kind of theories that have been given, which is your monoclimax theory, each with its own merits and demerits, in fact. So it was proposed by F.E. Clements. And then you have a polyclimax theory, which was proposed by A.G. Tansley. So different landscape has different climaxes. It is again controlled by different factors such as climate, topography, how the drainage, if at all there is a flood happening, if at all there is a fire is happening, how much of extent of damage can be caused. Estimation of damage is also important. And what are the other biotic influences? Human activity, grazing, etc. And then R.H. Whittaker had given a gradient approach. So climax is not just a single discrete unit, it is in continuum with all the other environmental gradients around it, other communities. So this gives you the variability and transition that is going to be integrated properly. And then you get to see again, you have different terms of your alternative stable states, all of it. And finally, when you come to an ecotone, actually it is the area wherein, transition zone basically between two ecosystems, the say freshwater and the marine water. Example. Then river bank and sea bank, that is what mangroves. Marine and terrestrial regions is your mangroves. Estuaries, freshwater, seawater. Alpine zone and tundra-like vegetation. It goes like, very cold to relatively cold. So you have different species which live over here because they need much better what do you call it conditions to live in, because they have to be able to sustain the extreme climatic conditions which are completely different from each other. So freshwater and seawater, there's a lot of difference. So you need special glands in the fishes, for example, to be able to filter the seawater. So you have a high environmental variability and presence of species from both the neighboring communities. And then you have ecotonal specialists that are highly adaptable. And of course, strong ecological interactions, that is competition, predation, all of it is there. And then when it comes to your edge effect, it is the change in the population density, species composition, and ecological process which is occurring at the boundary or the edge, that is your ecotone, between two habitats. So this is again important. Why should it be there? Because at an edge, what is happening is it's like your border. You have more than one food source. You have different areas where you can go and actually start taking shelter. There's a different microclimate at a very short distance. Need not go for a very long distance for a change in the area or whatever for and then you have a movement corridor for different kinds of foraging and dispersal. So but it can also create a stressful environment because there is a higher predator on the nests, and then you have the invasion by different kinds of species, and of course greater human disturbance, and then temperature and humidity fluctuations is there. So what are the different kind of edge effects? Forest edge near the farmland, then you have the fragmented forest patches, mangrove estuary edges, and then you have the grassland, woodland boundaries, in fact. So everywhere you see, finally we are there as human beings. This particular human disturbances is always going to be there. Now, what is the ecological significance of such ecotones? So they are the biodiversity hotspots and active interaction zones, in fact. And that is why, one of the reasons why all this forest edge, and then, you have certain biodiversity hotspots which are going to help you. They are being actively trying to conserve such kind of areas, in fact, so that, we have animal distribution happening, then migration routes, all of it is going to be better preserved. And in conservation biology, you try to understand the habitat fragmentation while studying your ecotones and how to again redesign or help in the wildlife reserve preservation. So it's a transition zone basically, and each effect is the ecological consequence which is there or present at such kind of boundaries. So then you have a ecotopic differentiation and RPA strategies. Now over here, development of distinct genetically based local forms is wherein you have the response to different environmental conditions happening. So same species, different habitats. So how do you finally adapt? It arises through natural selection, then limited gene flow, repeated survival of different kinds of genotypes, in fact. And then you can get to see that what is the kind of trait that is being developed because of all these ecotypic differences. Drought tolerance versus moisture demanding forms, early flowering versus late flowering, salt tolerance in the coastal population, so compact growth in alpine ecotypes. I think we have already spoken about one particular gene development in the Tibetan and the what do you call it areas. At that, there is a gene which has been altered in the Tibet and in the what do you call it Ladakh area, in fact, for that matter, in the human beings and in the particular animals over there, as compared to it, that is not there in the Andes population. So this kind of differentiation, trait formation, and how is it important? It contributes to your niche. It contributes to the resilience of a population so that it can survive long term, and you have a better community in the long term region. So R and K strategies like R selections and K selection is also playing an important. R selection is your basic bacteria and small rodent population, etc. Small body, rapid growth, early maturity, short lifespan, high reproductivity. And then you have the K selection, what do you call it, which is like, long term, larger body size. And then you have slower growth, all such kind of so what happens is it helps in late succession or mature communities. Example is your large mammals that are present. So finally, we have already seen this comparison table and all of that in a third or fourth lesson for that matter. So I'm not going to go into direct, go into it deeper. But you can get to see there's a difference in the kind of habitat, reproduction, maturity, and all of it. So succession, what happens is there's a general shift from the R-dominated communities to a K-influenced community. So this is how a population genetically gets adapted to the local environment so that it is able to survive for a longer time. And then together these concepts actually help us to see how it is going to survive after the disturbance and how the competition is going to occur. So this is all about your lesson 10. When you summarize it, you get to see that ecological succession is the gradual process in the species what do you call it, composition, and how it is going to be changing the community or present in the community over a period of time. So it is of two types, primary or secondary. And then finally, the final stage of the succession is called as the climax community, which is relatively stable until another major disturbance occurs. So this is how ecological succession helps in us, us to understand how an ecosystem develops, how to recover and maintain a balance in the nature. Now we'll start with lesson 11, which is your environmental pollution. You get to see that in environmental pollution, we have already, been seeing a lot of information regarding environmental pollution, in fact, for that matter. So there are different kinds of environmental pollution, such as air, water, noise, radioactive pollution, and all of it. And yes, there is a long-term damage that is occurring. At the short-term level, you're getting respiratory diseases, you're getting, what do you call it, breathing difficulties and all of that because of air pollution for that matter. And you have primary pollutants again, and secondary pollutants in the air pollution. When you get to see that all the primary pollutants, yeah, basically your carbon dioxide, then your organic vehicular exhaust, so volatile organic compounds, then nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides. Secondary are those which are going to be produced when there is a reaction between primary and natural atmospheric compounds, primary pollutants and natural, normal atmospheric compounds. So this is again, say for example, nitric oxide or nitrogen or oxides of nitrogen, and that reacts with ozone or vehicular what do you call it, volatile organic compounds. So this is going to produce the secondary pollutants. And all of them have your particulate matter, ground level ozone is present, carbon monoxide, and then, what do you call it, nitrogen oxides, leads. So what is happening is you have a ground level ozone. It's not getting directly released into the air. We have a low ozone layer on the top in the atmosphere, the layers of the atmosphere, in fact. But this ground level ozone forms when nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, they react in the presence of the sunlight. Industries, power plants, vehicular exhaust, or chemical solvents, all of it actually causes. So what is happening? Health problems in both the children and the senior citizens. And what do you call it? Immunologically vulnerable people. So you have lung diseases occurring. Now, particulate matter, again, you have this has small particulate matter. In fact, the liquid droplets are present, and once inside the body, again, they're going to affect your heart and lungs. So you have again problems. So then you have the carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, lead, which is again in the industry as well as in the natural way it is present. So what is happening? All of this air pollution will cause respiratory diseases. And if there is lead, mostly from the pollution due to factory wastes, industry, that is your metal processing industry, aircraft that uses this lead fuel for that matter, and then also you have the vehicular exhaust. So all of this serious health issues, they affect your brain and your nervous system. What are the other air pollutants? Heavy metals, persistent organic pollutants, chlorofluorocarbons. At least, in the last decade, the CFCs are they have come down. But unfortunately, they cause such an extent of ozone layer damage that, the ultraviolet radiation comes, causes aging, skin cancer, and other kinds of issues, in fact. What are the sources? Obviously, the first one is, or the major, most, the most, let us say 99% of the air pollution is because of human, that is sources, the anthropogenic sources. Vehicular exhaust, agricultural waste. Then you have natural sources are your volcanic eruptions, for that matter, dust and soil particles, vegetation emission, which is not much, wildfire and radon gas. So again, you have outdoor and indoor pollution. So end of the day, it is going to cause respiratory diseases. It is going to cause genetic changes. It can cause cancer, and immediate effect is your irritation of eyes, nose, throat, and all such kind of other symptoms that you get to see. And on long term, you get to see that the skin is getting damaged, and you have mutations taking place. There's a stress inside the body because of the reactive oxygen species, and this causes cancer. So what are the environmental impacts of the air pollution? Acid rain, that is seen because strong acids, and if at all there are sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, they react with water, form the sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, then nitric acid, all of it gets released. Acid rain causes corrosion. The calcium and magnesium and the other minerals get eroded. Then there's a damage to the vegetation, for that matter. Buildings, most famous example that's always been quoted is the Taj Mahal. And then you have the smog, which is a mixture of your different kinds of gases along with your particulate matter. So smoke and fog forms your smog. So it is of two types, industrial and photochemical. Then you have the volatile organic compounds. So these are again your benzene and carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. Basically, natural human sources are the ones that are there. So these are all because of benzene, toluene, formaldehyde, chloroform, phenols, all these synthetic chemicals that are present, which basic your disinfectant every day. You clean the floor with a disinfectant, then you use cosmetics, then you use adhesive, those strong adhesives, your paints, varnishes, all of them have volatile organic compounds. They are like full of benzene, toluene. Formaldehyde is a decolorant. Chloroform is present, so you have the new car smell, as you say, it's a mixture of your volatile organic compounds. So if at all you notice you are painting in a room, there is a much or 10 times more higher volatile organic compounds that are present over there, because they do not have the area for them to get dispersed is much lesser as compared to outdoor. So you have a sick building syndrome because of it. Now you have the water pollution. Again, types of water pollutant, different kinds of either pesticides, and then you have the hot water being released. Then then you have the different kinds of heavy metals, acids, all of it being released into the or discharged into the rivers, discharged into the groundwater. So you have a lot of pollutants over there. Either it is biological in nature or sewage water, for that matter, it is not untreated, so it has a lot of microorganisms in it. And then industrial effluents, when they are released into the water, into the rivers, they are again going to cause a lot of damage. And one more thing is your oil spills in the tanker accidents in the, like, in the seas or in the oceans for that matter. Whole area gets filled, and then you have around let us say, what happens is, because of the oil that is present on the water, so it flows to the surface, and then it is denser than water. So it increases, like, the distance between the, like, what do you call it, let us say it helps in less diffusion of oxygen. So what is happening is, like, there is no water oxygen available for the fish. At the same time, thick asphalt lumps are present, and then what happens is, what do you call it, the bacteria decompose the remaining oil process sometimes, but that is not, like, that takes place gradually over the time. But then you'll have to see that, you add detergent so that the oil breaks, because what happens is, it is harmful. This oil, whenever it goes onto the fish or the birds that are coming, it sticks onto their skin, which is another problem. So this oil spills are hugely dangerous, causes a lot of loss to the marine organisms, in fact. Then we have the different kinds, like, you have your biomagnification. So then what happens is, it helps in increasing of the algal blooms. Then water pollution in our country, you see, we do not have a lot of access for safe drinking water. So 21% of different kinds of diseases, communicable diseases, are because of the water quality. So we are doing a lot of trying to clean up. In fact, the Ganges is being cleaned up, and then you have the Yamuna river cleanup, because these are the two important rivers which are a lifeline to many, the most of the North India. In fact, so the effects of water pollution, again, you can get to see cholera. That is one of the most common diseases. Diarrhea from drinking contaminated water, for that matter. It causes hepatitis B. It causes, what do you call it, hepatitis A, I mean hepatitis basically. And then you can get to see that because of the presence of heavy metals, herbicides, industrial chemicals, there is a disturbance in the ecosystem. So what is happening because of this? The species are dying. Because of that, we do not have the sources of food, for that matter. Then whenever there is a more amount of nitrates, phosphates from the agricultural land, after you use the land for fertilization, you release the water, it causes eutrophication in the aquatic systems. And then drinking water or potable water is not available so easily because of water contamination. So what is the effect on agriculture? You get to see the pesticides, fertilizers, they are going to pollute the water sources. So your soil is getting affected. The productivity of the soil is getting affected. Damages the crop. So crop yield is affected. Then food scarcity is there. Untreated wastewater, if it goes, then what happens is, you're going to get a contaminated water, which will again affect the agriculture, and it will go get integrated into the soil, the, like, even the plants for that matter, and this causes hazardous residue buildup. And because of biomagnification, wherein, right from the small producers to the uh, apex consumers, end of the day, it is us finally who are getting affected because of it. Now, soil pollution is again, you have because of soil contamination or land pollution. So, heavy metals, your lead, arsenic, mercury, all of them highly toxic in nature. Petroleum hydrocarbons, solvents, pesticides. Water is getting affected, along with it, land is also getting affected. They are going to remain in the soil for many years together, and they will enter into the food chain through the crops that are growing in such kind of contaminated areas. So finally, it is going to reach us and again cause genetic alteration and cause harm to us. The microorganisms are not going to thrive in such kind of a, like, soil, polluted soil, for that matter. Plant growth is going to be altered. They are going to enter the food chain, like I told you. Then it, like, it causes skin diseases, respiratory problems, neurological disorders, cancer, all of it, for that matter. So again, what is the source for human exposure? Direct inhalation of the dust vapors, direct contact, and then consumption of the crops that are grown in the polluted soil, all of it. And who is the vulnerable species? Age group, it is the children. And again, this will impact on the population as well, because when the children are not there, then you have only the reproductive age and the old age. So the children get converted into the reproductive age. So your population is also going to change because of this. Now we have something called as noise pollution. People assume or tell that only Diwali causes noise pollution, which is the general assumption. For that one day will cause a lot of noise pollution, but we do not take into consideration the automobiles, the trains, the aeroplanes, then the industrial operation, heavy machinery, social events, all of this which cause a lot of noise, elevated noise level. We have a specific noise threshold level, in fact, that is around 120 decibels. If it goes beyond that, then that is when we have extensive damage to the ears, in fact. So the government has designated a particular threshold limit for residential, commercial, and industrial areas. How do you prevent or what do you call it, control of noise pollution? Again, proper urban planning, installation of sound barriers. If at all you have a lot of trees around you, it is going to be used as a silencer. So this will actually help in absorption of the sound. And those individuals who are working in noisy environments, those drilling people and what do you call it, people who work in engine rooms, especially they're supposed to have noise cancelling earplugs or earmuffs. But how many times have you seen on the road where a driller actually uses the earmuffs or plugs for that matter? It is unfortunate. Then you have the solid waste pollution. Again, a lot of solid waste. How is it? Household garbage is the biggest contributor. Plastics, paper, glass. And then you have the biomedical waste coming from the hospitals. Every single day you have so much of biomedical waste that is coming. You can classify them into hazardous. And then you have, they have different kinds of bins also. The red, the blue, the yellow, and the green bins. Segregation is very important. So, and then what else? Then you have the industrial effluents, the slurry, whatever comes out of the, what do you call it, or the sledge that comes out, and the other spare parts. So many things are there which actually contribute to the solid waste pollution, in fact. So, household commercial garbage is one, industrial, hazardous waste, biomedical waste, agricultural waste, construction demolition waste, electronic waste, which is again a major contribution today. We all assume that having an electric car is going to help the environment and nature. Unfortunately, no, it is adding the pollution in a very vast way. Maybe 10 years down the line, we will know how much of e-waste the electric cars are actually contributing. It is the truth, which will come out sometime, in fact, for that. And again, what is the effect of a solid waste pollution? It occupies space, degradation of it, plastics, toxic materials, starts leaching harmful chemicals into the soil and groundwater. And if you start burning them, it produces different kinds of pollutants and chemicals into the atmosphere for that matter. If at all there is accumulated garbage, it attracts different kinds of disease-causing animals near it. And your flies, rodents, mosquitoes. So again, those are going to help in spreading diseases. So, impact of human health, that stench we need to live with. Then you have a respiratory problem that is developing, skin diseases, gastrointestinal infections, harmful chemicals and heavy metals. If at all you're exposed to it, it will cause cancer. And then how do you prevent it? Again, 3 R's. They take a very important role. That is your reduce, reuse, and recycle. So this is very important for us. We need to segregate the waste. the compostable or the biodegradable materials, safe disposal of the hazardous waste. Then how do you reuse a product? Is it usable? Stainless steel for that matter. You can just wash it and then use it back again. Rather than plastic also you can reuse it, but it is not good because the plastic particles actually get integrated into the food that is being stored into the plastic. And so rather than plastic, use stainless steels. It will actually help in what do you call it? That will not get into the food particles for that matter. And then you need to have public awareness and strict enforcement of the environmental regulations. Now, one more thing is your radioactive pollution. How is it that radioactive contamination or pollution is occurring over here? Sources are again natural, man-made. Natural is your radon gas. You have natural radiation, cosmic radiation, radioactive minerals that is your uranium, thorium that is present in rocks, which is getting decayed. Man-made is much more a bigger contributor to the radioactive pollution. So nuclear power plants, uranium mining, nuclear weapon testing, accidents. The Chernobyl disaster is one. The Fukushima that happened because of tsunami, in fact. But then it happened. It was an accident. And then improper disposal of radioactive waste. To use radioactive isotopes in medicine, research, industry, and all of this. Medicine, for that matter, give radioactive barium. You have different kinds of for scanning. You use the radioactive isotopes. Then types of radiation, again you have alpha, beta and gamma. Alpha is like low penetration power. Beta is just penetrates into the skin, causes tissue damage. But gamma is like 8 times. You require heavy, you need at least 4 foot lead walls to prevent or to prevent the gamma radiation from what do you call it, penetrating and causing damage. That's how highly penetrating gamma rays are. And the neutron radiation is also extremely penetrating. All of this is there in the near the nuclear reactors for that matter. Health, long term, short term, doesn't matter. It when exposed, you have radiation sickness, then you have a lot of cancers that are happening. It basically goes and affects your cell cycle. So it causes leukemia, thyroid cancer, different kinds, infertility, genetic mutations. It's not just you, it is your next generation is also going to be affected because of exposure to radiation. So finally, these all actually go enter into the food chain and accumulate in the living organisms, causing an ecological damage, which is not reversible. It is going to be there for thousands of years because they have a half-life of many, many, many years together. How do you go measure the radioactivity? By becquerels. So number of nuclear disintegrations per second. How do you prevent or control and then how do you actually measure or know the presence of radioactivity? By your gigamolar counter and dosimeters. So they will be able to, a giga counter will detect the presence of radiation or radioactivity at a particular area. So this is one thing. And then how do you prevent or control? So it can be prevented. Be very careful. Monitor the radiation level. Then you have to, all of this is very strictly, it has to be followed at the nuclear facilities. Proper storage, disposal of radioactive waste. Then continuous monitor of the radiation levels. Whenever people are working with radiation levels, they are given a black badge for that matter, which will tell, how much of radiation exposure has taken place. Protective clothing, shielding, all of it is necessary to prevent. Then you have a decontamination method. So remove the contaminated materials, washing the affected surfaces. If you put those radioactive, whatever you have used in for normal washing, that is not going to help. You need a specialized cleanup technology for it. Then we have the bioremediation, bioaugmentation, biomagnification, all of this. That is your bioremediation is your waste management technique basically. So how do you remove the contaminants or neutralize the pollutants from a contaminated site for that matter? So you have microorganisms which are being used. So that is your xenobiotics, as it is known as. So they are the xenobiotics are the human-made substances which are released into the environment. So this is like, your environmental pollution. So adhesives, dyes, flame retardants, all of it. So you release, what do you call it, in situ or ex situ bioremediation, substances, which helps in, say, for example, oil spill is taking place in the sea. So you release certain bacteria such as Alconivorax workumensis. So what happens is when you release these bacteria, they try to degrade the oil spill. Then certain bacteria are there which can reduce the Ag2 plus to mercury, so which is less harmful. So this will help us, in fact, so that they this particular species Alconivorax synthesizes surfactants. So solubilization of the hydrophobic compounds is taking place. So you have air accessibility. Once this is taking place, then you have the disintegration of the oil spills taking place. Now, bioaccumulation, bioconcentration, biomagnification, all of this is what bioconcentration refers to: direct absorption of the chemicals from surrounding environments into an organism. Bioaccumulation, total buildup of the contaminants from the environmental exposure and the food over the time, how much is taking place. Biomagnification is wherein, what is happening is how much of an increase in the concentration of the different pesticides or toxic substances from one trophic level, from the producer's level to the herbivores level to the primary consumers, or the herbivores to the secondary consumers to the human beings is happening. So, including the humans. So this will tell you the effect, how much of pollution is taking place. So bioaccumulation is like, when the chemicals enter the organisms through the water. So what are the common substances which are going to accumulate? Heavy metals, mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, and then you have the different kinds of medicines also. A little while ago, we just like got to read. What was it that there is this particular uh, antibiotic that was being produced at a large scale level, and that effluents after the production, it was released into the Tirumalgiri area water. Early on, that antibiotic killed the bacteria inside it and there was not there. But gradual increase of this particular antibiotic into the water led for the resistant species of bacteria to sustain or to start living. So finally, what happened is today, this particular, since all the water bodies in the world are connected, whether you agree to it or not, that is the truth. So what happens is now you have a antibiotic resistant bacterial species or drug resistant microorganisms which have grown, which are thriving. So because of it, what happened is that particular antibiotic is not working against the particular issue, because the bacteria which have infected us are resistant to the drug today. So that's how your bioaccumulation will actually affect us. And then you get to see effect of the bioaccumulation is your antibiotic resistance, and then neurological disorders, kidney problems, cancers, developmental problem in the children. It causes that brain damage for that matter. Then you have example of bioaccumulation, which is your Minamata disease, methyl mercury in fish. Since it was seen in Japan, it is known as Minamata. So when you eat the smaller fish, then mercury is going to get accumulated. Then the predatory fish eat, and then finally it is the human beings which eat that. So yeah, Minamata disease. Absolutely right. So finally, what happened? It was the babies that were born without limbs. And why is it? Because of the consumption of the fish, which was affected with the accumulation of methyl mercury. How do you prevent? You need to filter out the effluents. You need to see that, you need to actually treat the hazardous substances so that they become a little less damaging to the environment. You need to provide a safer alternative, and you need to see or monitor every kind of waste that you're putting into or that you're letting out. So you have different kinds of agreements and conventions also that are there. And then when it comes to bioconcentration, the amount of concentration of a particular toxin inside the food, right from the aquatic organism to say the fish, and finally, when it comes to us, how much of it is persistent. So then you have the bioconcentration factor, which is expressed by BCF. It is the ratio of the concentration of a particular chemical in the concentration to the concentration at the surrounding water at equilibrium levels. So this is necessary, because bioconcentration is seen in mercury, cadmium, lead, and then you have your PCBs, biphenyls for that matter, DDDs, and all of it. So these substances are resistant to degradation. So what happens? They're all they get stored in the fatty tissues. So what are the effects you can get to see? Impaired growth, reproductive failure, behavior changes, or the damage in from the smallest of the organisms to apex predators, that is human beings. Biomagnification is something wherein you use fertilizers, then you add the nitrates, the phosphates, all of it get released into the water, and then you have the concentration of it. So so it causes greater chemical concentrations in the organisms higher up in the food chain, basically, you get to see. So other chemicals that exhibit biomagnification is your DDT, PCBs, and arsenic. So eutrophication is because of the fertilizers that are being released. They cause the algal blooms to occur in the water. So when that happens, dissolved oxygen levels get reduced. So the aquatic animals do not get enough amount of oxygen to thrive. So end of the day, we need to keep a check and use the 3 R's, that is reduce, recycle, and at the same time, reuse. Reduce, reuse, and recycle, and see the things that we use basically, and be a little more prudent. Education should not be used for using more damage. So that's what. So, and being educated, we should be able to reduce our pollution, whatever we are causing, because 99% of the pollution, whether it is air, water, soil, radioactive, all of it is being because of being human beings. So these particular definitions are very important. If you know these, you can answer all those questions. Now let's go to lesson 12, which is your biogeochemical cycles. Now, when we come to this, what are we going to see as a biogeochemical scientists? This is where you have the living organisms, the soil, and the area it is present in, or where we are present, and the chemical cycle is taking place. So, how the chemical substances are being recycled with the biotic components, that is the plants, animals, microorganisms, and the abiotic components, that is air, water, soil in the earth. So this is absolutely essential, all of this, because whatever resources there is limited. Instead of being used once lost, at the nature level, there is only a repeated recycling of it. So this is how the future generations can live. Without a biogeochemical cycle, there is no recycling occurring. It is a cycle as it is known as. So finally, we do not have a lot of sources or natural resources left. So again, human activities play a very important role. Human induced cycles are there. Now you are adding even more pollutants to the fact, and the other geochemical cycles are being affected. So finally, when you get to see, in some cycles, there are a special storage area called reservoirs. What are they? Oceans, rivers, lakes, reservoirs for water. Atmosphere is for gases. Rock soils for different kinds of minerals. Fossil fuels are the ones that store carbon. Even carbon is getting depleted fast. So, what are the important biogeochemical cycles? That is the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium, calcium. They are present within our body. They are present. First thing is they're present within our body. They help in different kinds of or facilitate different our life to be propagated in a better manner for a healthy living for that matter. So all of these play an important role. I need not know, go into details because your DNA contains all of them for that matter. Your you need for calcium for that matter is present in your teeth, bones, as for nerve impulses to propagated also you need your calcium. So just one. All of this is there. And then you have trace elements that is your minerals, copper, zinc, cobalt, molybdenum, iron, potassium. And why is all of these biogeochemicals important? Because they're going to recycle the nutrients in the nature. Maintenance of ecological balance has to occur and it is important. Supports plant growth, food production, keeps the air, water and soil chemically balanced. So, so these are the biogeochemical cycles that are occurring. The first one we've already seen earlier also when it comes to the different kinds of deposits. You have the plants and animals. This is a rock carbon reservoir basically. Carbon is absolutely necessary whenever there is a plant decaying or animal decaying. All of it leads to the what do you call it? The deposition of carbon. Okay, over the period of time. So these are the fossils that are being formed. And when it comes to the water cycle, it is because of water, or it is also known as the hydrological cycle, in fact. So what happens? You have solid to liquid to vapor or gas. So you have the evaporation. You just can see water, oceans. So evaporation of the water because of the heat. Then it gets condensed, forms the rain clouds. Then you have the precipitation, and once then it comes in as water back, and this is cutting. And of course, you have fog, which is a basic water vapor, and what do you call it, smoke put together, and then you have the air. So all of this. So finally, why is a water water cycle important? Because you get to see that it is how you're going to get your natural water. Ocean, if you see ocean water vapor goes and it gets what do you call it, forms and what do you call it, forms the rain and comes down as your water, which is not saline in nature, in fact, for that matter, but it is the water that is available finally for us to drink. And because the ocean is a salt water, only the water is getting evaporated and it comes down as your potable drinking water. So it is absolutely important. So if at all this runoff water or if at all this water cycle is not taking place properly, it is going to cause a problem because it helps in what do you call it, available water for us. When it comes to the sulfur cycle, it is important because cysteine, which is an amino acid, cysteine, homocysteine, cysteine, they're all sulfur compounds and sulfur amino acids. Methionine, cysteine, homocysteine, they're all the amino acids which are necessary. They're present in our body and we need them for proteins. So how is sulfur deposited on the land? Through four different mechanisms: precipitation, atmospheric fallout, rock weathering, and geothermal vents. So geothermal vent is a place where the temperature is very high. There's a lot of sulfur deposit present. And the terrestrial ecosystems, they are going to use the soil sulfates that are present, and it both gets absorbed by the plant roots and it gets integrated into the food web. So why do we need sulfur? Because of We need it because we need the amino acid for protein synthesis. So without sulfur, we are not there. So this, and in the water also, you have the marine habitats, you have the sulfates that are present. Now, whenever there is a human activity, there is a disruption for the equilibrium of the global sulfur cycle. So combustion, fossil fluids, excess, elevated levels of hydrogen sulfide gas into the atmosphere causes acid rain. Acid rain increases the what do you call it, acidity. So there's a decrease in the pH, causes corrosion, skin problems, and then demineralization. All of this is occurring because of they have given away a Lincoln memorial in Washington DC, but even the Taj Mahal has suffered with this particular acid rain. When it comes to the carbon cycle, you get to see that carbon cycle has how the carbon is exchanged among the biosphere, the pedosphere, the geosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere. All of these rims which are present, and it is absolutely essential for a carbon sink to happen. So if you see the relationship between different species in any kind of area is going to be based on the carbon cycle that is present. Atmospheric carbon dioxide is what autotrophs use for the formation of their energy, which is glucose. So that is your photosynthesis. When photosynthesis occurs, utilization of water and carbon dioxide, this is going to be used to produce your glucose and oxygen. So through this process, you have photosynthesis. Because of this, you have the respiration. Respiration, fermentation, use the glucose that is being produced by the autotrophs to produce the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. That is one way. So there is a continuous exchange of carbon dioxide from the autotrophs and the heterotrophs. Autotrophs utilize the carbon dioxide, produce the energy, that is the glucose, which is utilized by the heterotrophs to produce through fermentation and respiration, major respiration, the carbon dioxide back. Right? So it is that is your anabolism and catabolism which is taking place. In addition to respiration, we are also adding carbon dioxide into the atmosphere because of the greenhouse gases, vehicular exhaust, so many ways. Because of which, what will happen is there is an increase in the temperature. So the interconnected pathways of exchange are like, we have already seen atmosphere, terrestrial biosphere, oceans, sediments, and the Earth's interior. All of it, you have reservoirs or storage area for carbon as such. In chemical, physical, any way it is being produced. Ocean has the largest active pool of carbon near the surface of the Earth. So, in the atmosphere again, it is present in two main forms, carbon. One is methane, the second is your carbon dioxide. So, methane produces a larger greenhouse effect per volume as compared to the carbon dioxide. But it exists in a lower concentration and it is not going to stay as long as the carbon dioxide. So, end of the day, both carbon dioxide and methane are your greenhouse gases, which contribute for the heat. And when dissolved in the water, carbon dioxide reacts with the water molecules. It forms an acidic acid, that is a carbonic acid. So, this is again increasing your ocean acidity. When it is absorbed by the rocks through weathering, then it will help in having a carbon deposit. So finally, it is a human activity which has significantly increased the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So when it comes to the terrestrial biosphere, the next part, it includes all the organic carbon which is present. And most of it is organic in nature, a third of it is inorganic in nature. And because carbon dioxide, uptake in the terrestrial biosphere is dependent upon the biotic factors, it again follows a diurnal and seasonal cycle. Again, you can see into the atmosphere because of photosynthesis, you have the atmospheric carbon dioxide levels coming down. But plant respiration, human or other organisms respiration leads to carbon dioxide increase. Industrial, carbon dioxide also is increased. So finally, what happens is the carbon goes into the soil, forms a fossil pool, and at the soil you have a soil carbon. Then you have an atmospheric carbon, and ocean is the biggest carbon pool present, right? So acidification of ocean levels because of the increased carbon dioxide have also caused shift in the pH. And Earth's interior also has carbon in the form of the fossil fuels. So depletion in the soil is happening, but increasing in the atmosphere and in the ocean is happening. So we do not have a balance of the carbon cycle over here. When it comes to the phosphorus cycle, we are done with carbon cycle. Now let us go into the phosphorus cycle, wherein phosphorus is going into the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, and in the biosphere. We need phosphorus because it is in our DNA, and there is a lot of human involvement in the major, which has caused major changes to the global phosphorus cycle for that. What is the ecological function of phosphorus? DNA is present, it has phosphorus base in fact, and you have an orthophosphate ion which is present. Then so all of it is actually very important for us to have phosphorus, but not much, or at the level where it is actually causing pollution for us. So finally you have phosphorus extraction from the mineral mines. It gets run off into the rivers and streams. You have an organic phosphate deposition and decomposition, decaying animals basically. Again, erosion from the phosphate rocks. So runoff into the rivers and streams. You are adding extra phosphate to the fertilizer. The phosphate uptake by plants, again, or after organic decomposition, gets added to the soil. In the water, if you see dissolved phosphates, they are taken by the algae and the other photosynthetic organisms, cause the eutrophication. So uptake by aquatic and marine animals is also taken place. So this is your basic phosphorus cycle. And what happens is, it is one of the slowest biogeochemical cycle because it is not at such a huge rate that the phosphate cycle keeps moving. So one good thing is, it is not found in the air as a gas, but except in very rare cases, it is found as phosphine. End of the day, it is the human activity which has added a lot of phosphorus to the soil and to the water levels. So causes a dead zone to occur. So as of 208, there is more than 400 dead zones that have occurred, and wherein what happens is, flora, fauna, all of it, because of eutrophication, it has increased. So you do not have animals which are there because the marine animals have declined because of the less amount of dissolved oxygen for that matter. So that's what dead zone is, basically a region. It's present in the lake or ocean, which is actually near to the let's say the area where it is being say where the river and the ocean meet, or the river mouth, delta area. So you don't have the normal flora and the fauna that are present in the other river banks in this particular area. So, and we have added the human activities, and then we have caused eutrophication to occur. Rundown phosphates and all of it have gone. They reduce the dissolved oxygen content. Then you have the increase in the algal blooms in that area. And also one more thing is your oil spill. So all of it has contributed to such an area where there is not much of flora and fauna growing anymore. And when it comes to the dead zone in oceans, you get to see it is low oxygen. So because of fertilizer, sewage, so what happens is algal blooms are there. When the algae die, bacteria decompose them. So this consumes the dissolved oxygen. So when less oxygen is there, then you have the less marine life because no availability of oxygen is there. So you have a lot of dead zones actually. The Baltic Sea has a dead zone, and you have Gulf of Mexico. Somewhere near Dubai also there's a huge, big dead zone that is coming up. Hypoxic in nature. Now when it comes to the nitrogen, I'll stop at 12 o'clock. Please continue till 12. So nitrogen cycle, different kinds of nitrogen, wherein you have nitrogen, nitrates, nitrites, atmospheric nitrogen gas, and nitrogen dioxide. All of it is being circulated among the atmosphere, the land, and the water. So you have nitrogen fixation, you have ammonification, nitrification, denitrification, all of it. It is one of the most important cycles ever present, nitrogen cycle. However, atmospheric nitrogen is not very available for the biological use. So when you get to see this, it affects the primary production, decomposition, and human activities such as your fossil fuel combustion, then your nitrogen fertilizers that you're adding have altered the global nitrogen cycle in a very, very, very profound manner. So you have nitrates, nitrites, nitrous oxide, nitric oxide, and of course inorganic nitrogen gas, which is there. So finally, it has to be, recycled or cycled. So conversion of the nitrogen gas into nitrates, nitrites through the atmospheric, industrial, biological process is your nitrogen fixation. So you have different kinds of bacteroids, plants present. In fact, nitrogen fixing plants are there. And then you have the rhizobium, and you have different kinds of fungi also which are involved. Bacteria, we have already, you must have read it in nitrogen fixation. So you have they convert the organic nitrogen into ammonium, ammonification or mineralization. And then the enzymes are your, uh, synthetases. And then you have your oxoglutarate and aminotransferases. These are the enzymes which are necessary to convert the nitrogen into ammonia first. And then once then you have other bacterial species such as your Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter, which will convert the ammonia into other forms, nitrates and nitrites. So you have your ammonification taking place. So anaerobic ammonia oxidation is wherein you have your nitrates and the ammonia is converted directly into your molecular nitrogen gas that is present. So you have atmospheric nitrogen gas, minimal actually, but then you have your emissions, nitrogen oxide, nitric oxide, all of that for that matter. They get absorbed through the soil, through your nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil, in the root nodules of leguminous plants. And then through your ammonotelic, then you have your urine of different kinds of animals and birds having nitrogen in them, or forms of nitrogen. Then dead animals, plants, decomposition. This all leads to the ammonification and production of ammonia, which will cause nitrification, that is conversion of the ammonia into nitrates and nitrites. And then finally you have denitrification, and this is a process which occurs again and again. How is it that human activity is affecting nitrogen cycle? You see, combustion of fossil fuels, and in agriculture you are adding a lot of fertilizers. So major effect of this, nitrogen gases combustion is the production of acid rain. And then fertilizer runoff is your saltwater, freshwater eutrophication, which is taking place. So this is about the the nitrogen cycle for that matter. Then increasing levels of the nitrogen deposition shows good impact on the environment, but it also has a negative effect. If at all it gets converted into nitrates and nitric oxide, then it causes acid rain, which we do not want. But if at all the transfer of what do you call it into the terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems take place, then it is particularly good in the land for that matter. So in the land it is good, but in the atmosphere it is not that great. So aerosols, they are directly toxic to certain plant species. So we need to see that there is a maintenance of all of this taking place, especially the nitrogen. I will stop here. For that matter, it is already 12 o'clock. The oxygen cycle and the rest I will